Okay, so for this video we'll go through the right to be forgotten report that's been worked on over the past couple of sprints, and just give you a general update on where we are with regards to the remaining factors for GDPR. If I just start to begin with before going anywhere, just revisiting some of the fields that were added as part of this functionality. So um, the additional fields that will be added to a candidate record and a contact record, just as a point of note, on of the custom fields area, there'll be these additional fields added for logging GDPR status and consent, essentially. So you'll have a yes/no field for consent given. You'll have a requested date for when the request for consent was sent out, and you'll obviously have a response date for when you receive that response. And all of these fields are updated automatically via the web surface, which was done under a different video for the right to consent functionality, but the report utilizes these fields among others, so it's just important that I make a point of note just to cover those quickly. So if we bring up the GDPR right to be forgotten report, what this will allow you to do is run a report looking for specific records and then be able to run workflow which actually deletes those records. And when we say delete records, we're talking about an actual deletion where the data itself is masked permanently and the history associated with it is wiped clean. But I'll demonstrate what I mean by all of that. So with the entity type, obviously this is an option to be run against the candidate and the contact. So we'll select a candidate. If you want to individually select a single record, you can obviously put the ID of that record in there. But we'll do a date range type search to bring back several records. You have the option to look for records that have even been given consent or not given consent, or either, which will also incorporate fields where they're empty, essentially. So it's any scenario. But we'll look for a candidate that's not been given consent, or that's not given consent. Sorry. You can include your deleted items as well. That's obviously for other records that have been deleted via the older method. For sort of general just data tidy up, you can utilize that function there. And what we'll do is we'll look for records that have responded and given us a response from the beginning of the year to now. So it's candidates that have not given consent and replied back advising that they've not given consent from the beginning of the year till now. So if we run that report, and it will bring back a list of records that obviously fit that criteria. Obviously this is a small list of records, so I appreciate that. It's obviously prepped data for the demo, but the idea is that it's obviously going to give you an idea of what to expect from the report. So obviously you have your list of records here. You have the access to open those records, which I'll do for a single record in a moment. If I just draw your attention to this column for placements, so what this is doing is, as part of bringing up these candidates, it's checking to see whether or not there are any placements associated with that candidate. So obviously with Mark Smith, we've got some placements associated there. The reason why it's doing that is because as it stands, the functionality in the event of a candidate being placed against a placement or put in a placement, at that point there's a reasonable justification to hold that data for the purposes of a financial audit trail. So there is obviously potential timesheet records, invoice records that could be created associated to that placement, and then obviously they then get carried over into other accounting relating solutions as well. So in the event of a placement being made against a candidate, as it currently stands, it's not going to be an option to delete them under the reasonable justification clause within GDPR. But we appreciate there will be scenarios in future where you will be looking to potentially anonymize or delete off placement related data to a candidate under this setup. So that will be further functionality that we'll refine within this solution over time. But as it stands, what we'll be looking to do is obviously implement this solution so that there's an option to delete a record if it's not associated to a placement. If I open up a candidate record just to help prep this, so obviously we're looking at Trevor Payne here as an example. We can obviously see let's just put some extra data in here. we can obviously see that there is data obviously held against this record, email addresses, phone numbers. He's got the mail shot status of allow all. Against history, there's some history in here that's obviously been recorded. And essentially what's happened is obviously Trevor's come back advising that we've not got consent to hold his data. He's made that request, and as such we now need to delete his record. So what we'll do is close down this record now. So what we'll do is we'll click on delete record here. What that will do is it will run a quick confirmation message asking for you to confirm whether or not you want to proceed, because it's obviously going to delete all of the details for Trevor Payne. If you've got the option obviously to say no, and obviously that will take you back to where you were before, or if you wish to proceed you can obviously select yes, and that's obviously going to perform the deletion. We've got this set up as a table because it's our intention to obviously implement a delete all function, so that this will list off all of the records that have been deleted as part of that process. But this is obviously just a confirmation message that the record has been deleted. So if we now go to Trevor Payne's record, you'll see that the surname is basically the name of the record now is deleted candidate, and essentially data relating to that record has now been masked, or more to the point blanked out. It's not a case of the data is being protected or encrypted somewhere else, or is available anywhere else. It's essentially been erased and replaced with asterisks associated to it. You also notice the mail shot status is now set to allow none. On the history, there is a history obviously created to advise that the record was deleted, and the date of course when that happened, but all other history records will be blanked, so there'll be no history text associated to any records. The actual history logs of that event happening and the date and time is there to retain activity statistics, but in terms of the actual content of it and the ability to be able to recognize this record, it essentially is gone because the record has essentially been deleted. And that's how the functionality will work, and that's how it will be delivered to clients across the board really. As mentioned in a previous video, we've done this in a manner so that it can be applied to all systems regardless of your colleague version. So that's why we've done it in a report function, so that obviously there's not a dependency on a version there. So that's the right to be forgotten functionality. That's how we'll deliver it. There's a few final things that we're tying off with regards to that. The right to access report has already been delivered. That was covered in a separate video. And the right to consent report, the right to consent functionality, obviously from a web service and Azure database perspective is all taken care of. There's some feedback that we've received related to the process in which you would go about requesting consent, or how you'd like a candidate to advise consent, and that's essentially taking us down the route away from the web page format and more down the route of it being an email template that you would literally just send, and you'd have a yes or no option in the email template. So that's what we're just refining at the moment at the final stages. We're hoping to have everything really tied off over the course of the next 2 weeks, and then we can move forward with obviously deploying everything. But that's just an update on where we are with the right to be forgotten report specifically. But hopefully that's helped just to give you an update there.